Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our next conversation, which is on mobility in inclusive, sustainable, and healthy cities. Joining me on the stage is Derrick Xiong. He is the CMO and co-founder of Ehang, and Xavier Lepine, chairman of the board and director of Française Group. Thank you. So each of these gentlemen are working on promoting and achieving mobility and sustainability in urbanization. To kick us off and get the conversation going, Derrick is going to show a video of what his organization does. Many of you might have seen the aircraft out in the interactive area where lunch is being served. So now we'll get to see it more in action on stage. Ready?
Right.
Yeah.
So, hi everyone, I'm Derrick, and I'm the co-founder and CMO of Ehang. So, I think before we get into the topics, I really love to show a video of what we do around the world. Before we talk about things in details. So now you can see this. This is called a Ehang AAV. It's a very new concept. It's called a Ehang autonomous aero vehicle. It's built for the future of urban mobility, future of urban air mobility. So basically, we have conducted tests everywhere around the world. Now you see this in Dubai, in Doha, in Austria, Vienna, and we just conducted demos in China all the time as well. So it's not just the hardware, it's not just the aircraft. So what you're seeing here, this is the command control center we built in China as well, to remote command control every single, to remotely command control the aircraft in the air. And also every single data from the sensor is going to be transmitted back to the command control center real time. And these are the testing things we just did in Amsterdam early this year, as well as in Doha. So the idea is to bring autonomous and to bring smart future of urban air mobility to people, to real life. And I think what we are talking about today is not just about, it's not just the future. It's actually happening today. So, yeah.
So when you're talking to governments about allowing your aircrafts in a city or a country, and they have concerns about air traffic and regulation, your company's not going to be in charge of that, correct? We talked about this, right?
Right. So we launched the very first version of the Ehang aircraft early in 2000, back in January 2016. Since that time, every government, we talk to, we have similar conversations that how we can regulate this new kind of technology and how we can make sure that people benefit from it and, instead of having any problem with it. So I think, nowadays we're doing very good, and we make a huge progress around the world. In China, actually, we just have this approval from the China CAAC, which is China Civil Aviation Administration, allowing us to have this pilot program, allowing us to do test demos, to do test flights in different parts of China. And we have this full series of tests that's going to be conducted in the next 1 year. So after this whole pilot program is done, we can start this this official process of airworthiness certification, which is very new, which no one has done. And then for other countries, we have been in talks with, we have conducted demos in everywhere. So like what I say, in Doha, in Vienna, probably in France very soon. So what happens, people need to see it before we really talk about it. So people need to see it is flying, and then people have to test fly it. Now we have conducted over 3,000 flying tests, and over 100 people has actually flown with us in the past 3 years, including the Minister of Transportation in Austria, including the Deputy Mayor of Guangzhou City in China, and including a lot of people from the public sector, from the private sector, as investors and entrepreneurs. I think they need to see, and this takes time. It is a process that we have to go through. But I think we're really lucky. We're in a stage that everyone is very, very it's getting more and more optimistic about what's going to happen in the future. So we made a very good progress, and we hope that we can, come here to fly sometimes.
Great, thank you. Now, Xavier, you're not necessarily promoting mobility and urbanization through the sky. You're doing it in a different way. Can you share with the audience what La Française Group is doing for people that are in need and want affordable housing?
Question is, what's a sustainable city? How to cope with three major changes. One is global urbanizations, which make an increase of the price of the land because of scarcity. Second fact is that people are living longer, so they retire at, let's say, 60, and they live up to 90 years. And the third thing is that the way they live is completely different. I mean, they've changed of jobs, so it means they take charge of cities, they change of family. In the big cities, it's more than half of the people who are getting married, but marriage is the first cause of divorce. And so it means that it makes the prices of real estates for housing not affordable. So the question, therefore, is if we want a sustainable city, it means that we have to cope with the need of. There is at least one thing we will never change, is that you need a roof on your head for your whole life. Is it financially achievable today for the young generation? Is it interesting for investors, institutional investors, to address this issue? So the answer that La Française is currently providing on the market is what we called the flexi property, the flexi ownership, which means that we provide residential housing, apartments, I would say, for people are buying, but for a limited full ownership, but for a limited period of time. The limited period of time is, let's say, the minimum between 50 years and your life. And then you have to cope with all the various issues, which is when you move, because you change of work, when you divorce, because you change of life, when you retire, and so on. So the way we address that is that we are creating an offer which makes the property with a 30% discount. So 30% means that the prices of the ownership becomes affordable for the young generations, and together with an attractive return for institutional investors, because they know that at one time they will re-own the property itself. And it's working very well. It's working very well because one more time, if you are 35 years old, if you have 2.1 kids, what you want to do for them is to be at home, not too late. So even if there are nice way to go from your work to from your office to your home, it has to be reasonable. Secondly, you need good schools, and thirdly, you need flexibility. So for us, mobility is flexibility. So flexi ownership is the answer that we provide.
So what I think is really fascinating about what you're both doing, even though they are two different businesses, is that you're really, in some ways, modernizing the markets that you're dealing with.
I don't think we have any choices.
Yeah.
So technology is providing one of the answers. That's clear, and that's what you do. And finance has to provide the other part of the answer. Because one more time, it's not little change that we are facing. It's huge. The fact that people are living 90 years, the fact that 30 years of retirement, the fact that we live in cities and not in the suburb and not in countryside, all of that, it's huge change.
What are some of the main, are there any really significant obstacles or pushback from players in the sectors that you're currently working with that you've received, and how did you overcome that?
Well, it's not that easy to set up. We did not have any legal issues because we think that if we have, when it comes to this type of problem, it's like more or less the same thing like you. We have to deal with the regulations. So we try to manage that without having any legal issues. And secondly, we have to cope with the mayor of the cities. But with our competitors, I guess that finance can address the problem if we find, and there are some, long-term investors, intergeneration investors. And there are plenty in the world. So not a big issue in itself.
So for us, the obstacles are, a lot of people ask us this kind of questions since the very beginning. So a lot of people say it's technology, it's whether it's safe. Because the video I showed you just now, this new form of aircraft comes with multiple propellers and multiple motors, and each motor is being charged and being run independently by batteries. So we are very confident about technology actually. It's not just about and when you are experiencing any broken or failure of the motors, you have the rest of 15 to back up. And actually, we have conducted tests like, even you lose 5 propellers out of all the 16, these aircraft still manage to hover and land as soon as possible in a near landing pad. So we're confident about technology. We're very confident. Then people say, is it the obstacle coming from the regulation, side? So I think it's just a matter of time because there is, even though today there's no foundation for the airworthiness certification for aircrafts like this in this form, but there are processes we can follow and there are ways that we can prove, as long as we can provide a large amount of data that prove that this is safer than helicopter, this is safer than the traditional aircraft. We can deal with the regulations. But what we believe the most important, the biggest obstacles is actually people's mentality. Because when you see something like this, people the first time, a lot of people feel scared. They feel like, oh, this is a new thing. So I always give this example that, today we have 1.2 million deaths every year, on Earth because of the car accident. But people still make money. We buy new cars, right? But there was, I think, early this year or last year, there was a very first death caused by the Uber, autonomous driving vehicle. Everyone's scared. This whole industry might be pushed back for another 2 to 3 years. So that's what people are scared of. So I have this saying that, we're not really afraid of dying. We're actually more afraid of a new way of dying. That's the kind of mentality we have. So we really need people to see like how this aircraft could fly in a very, very safe way and how, this is really safe, but you need to see, and people need time to consume. People need time to accept in the process. So I think that's the biggest challenge for us.
Yeah. What's your main demographic of the demographic of people interested in the aircrafts at this point?
The main demographic, well,
Age-wise.
Age-wise, well, I think it applies to everyone because it's not just about age. It's not just about ages because to fly with this aircraft, you don't need to get a piloting license. You just need to be the passenger. You can play with your phone. You can listen to music. We especially designed this entertainment screen in front of you. It's just like you take the Boeing or Airbus airline. You can do whatever you want. You can play with your phone as well. So it's not just about age. It's more about whether you have this whole environment to support you, to make you feel safe. You have everyone, you have the government support, you have the private sector to support, you see charging stations everywhere, you see this whole technology of, automation is coming. I think that's the thing. Otherwise, no matter you're a teenager, you're adult, it doesn't matter because you're just sitting there. And everyone needs to avoid the traffic, right? Everyone needs to go to work, go to school.
I would much rather take one of your aircrafts to work than a car, or the subway, for that matter. So Xavier, I have a question for you now, and it's also regarding, it's a generational question. With regard to people needing or wanting affordable housing to actually own their home. I don't know if the statistics are the same across France, but in the United States, the millennials, in terms of home ownership, that debt has gone way down compared to their parents. Is it the same in France? And if so, how have you managed to reach out to that age group to encourage them to buy and to encourage them and say that it's okay and it's actually the best thing for you to do?
It's clear that the French are moving less than in the US. It's difficult for them even when they live in the left bank of Paris to go on the right bank. So you can imagine. Having said that, it's something very strange. The way that people react vis-à-vis their to be owner or to rent the house. The younger generation, they want the use. They don't want the ownership. It's true for cars. It's starting for the flat, but that's one thing. But the problem is, and one more time, that's what we did. That is that you know that your life will not be linear. And that you have to move for various reasons. And when you buy something which is very, very expensive, even sometimes not affordable, well, what can happen? So you need to be secured. You need to be secured on the fact that you can sell it and that you will not, and that you know by advance at what price. Otherwise, but it does not work. So but it's a critical issue for cities. Otherwise, these sustainable cities will not be sustainable. Maybe they will have clean air, they will have a lot of technologies, but for whom?
So we're close to running out of time. Before we go, would you each just share your insights on why people in the audience can be hopeful and feel positive about what's in store for urbanization? No?
So why people could have hold hopes for urbanization?
Yeah, so there's a lot of the world is overpopulated. We're facing climate change. Schools are very expensive for many people in certain parts of the world. Many people lack education. There's large pollution. There's gridlock. What are things? Why? Both of you must be very optimistic about the future of urbanization. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing. What do you say to people when they feel like their cities aren't going to be able to withstand what the future holds?
Right. So from our perspective, to summarize, there are 3 points. So the first thing we do is, this is purely electricity powered. It's more green. It's greener. The second thing is autonomous. People, we can't really count on all these like manual control thing. Then the third thing is that it's safer. So we're really coming from this technology perspective. We make better products, and we hope we can change the way that people transport. We transform the two-dimensional transportation into three-dimensional, and that's the aim we have, and that's the thing we want to do.
Thank you.
Well, I guess that we can always be pessimistic, but we have to be optimistic. I think the young generation is clearly changing many things, and including residential. That's all.
Thank you both for joining me. All right, thank you, everybody.